All of you have really inspiring stories, not just personal stories, but inspiring stories, I think, to future candidates. Senator, you ran against, I'll say his name, Pedro Espada, the infamous, the Senate Majority Leader. Councilmember Ulrich ran against both as he was saying, both against the Democratic machine and against the Republican machine, taking both on head-on. Lincoln, you ran against Vito Lopez, and Councilmember James is the only member of the City Council who is of a third party. So these were all, on paper, kind of generally insurmountable odds. For those of you who don't know, we tend to re-elect 99% of our incumbents, and for the most part, those are all people who have been, the people who are elected have essentially been predetermined by the party bosses and the system. So what do you think, what is a piece of practical advice that you can give to candidates who are looking to take on the odds? And what do you think a candidate really needs to know from a pragmatic standpoint to get elected against the machine system?
I think that the most simple thing is to think it through. And when I say think it through is really think about how do you actually get to victory. I had the, part of the, I had the privilege of having been an operative and getting other folks elected for almost a decade. And so I was already, my plan originally was to find somebody to run their campaign. So I had already done all the numbers in my head, had looked at what, where I thought he was weak, the fact that his base was in Soundview, which is nowhere near my district because he used to represent another district. The fact that the turnout was low all over the place, so the fact that he was hated, almost universally, so I could obviously count on support from folks if I could demonstrate that I would be able to put a campaign together. So thinking it through, when I actually, as I stated earlier, I teach political science, and I teach one of the classes that I teach is about politics and government. Others I teach about campaigns. And when I think of campaigns, I think of four general things that campaigns do. Politics, finance, communications, and field. Politics being relationships, finance being money, and obviously, particularly when it comes to city council, making sure that you're doing the compliance. Communications is messaging, both in paid and earned media, and field, direct voter contact, voter identification, and voter mobilization. I usually did politics and field, finance and communications was stuff that I didn't do personally as an operative. But what I tried to do was thinking about those things and for the folks that might want to be candidates in the future, what you need to figure out is how you can get to the place where the only thing that you're doing is talking to voters and raising money. That's it. If you can figure out, by thinking it through and figuring out how you need to get to win, is surrounding yourself with people that can actually run those aspects of the campaign so you don't have to do it. I was going to start ranting over that. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. If you have to be the one that's making, you have to be the one that makes the choices about hiring and firing on a daily basis, you're not going to be able to win. If you have to if you are the one cutting the turf to actually figure out who goes knocking on which doors, you're not going to be able to win. If you're the one doing the research of who it is that you should be asking for money, you're not going to be able to win. If you're the one that has to call reporters and pitch stories, you're not going to be able to win. With the parentheses that when it comes to local campaigns, press is almost completely unimportant. Local campaigns, particularly city council, if you're spending an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out how you're going to talk to the press, you're wasting your time. You should be talking to voters. So it is about how do you, think it through, figure out how you're going to raise the amount of money that you need, make sure that you have a message that is, and I'm sure that you'll be talking about messaging, you'll be talking about communication, so you're talking about finance here. But then how do you put yourself in a position where when you're waking up every day, all that you're doing is talking to voters and raising money. And then depending on the size of the campaign, then talking to a reporter every now and then. But please, I don't know if there's any reporters in the room, but smaller races really don't make a difference. So really, how do you get to a point where you do that? You raise money and talk to voters.
Councilmember, before I ask you the same question, I want to just accentuate what an important point that is. It's a lot of times first-time candidates make the mistake of being too controlling. You know, and you realize that, and for the most part in sports, you don't have a lot of player managers, right? And that's because you need one person to be the coach, and you need one person to be the star player. And you have to realize that as a candidate, you're the star player, and you have to put in place a coach and a support team that is going to guide you and that you can trust. And if you're trying to micromanage all their decisions, you can't do your job, which is being the candidate. And it's important to realize that the candidate works for the campaign team. As Senator Rivera was saying, Doug Ferran was his boss. You know, oftentimes you would think as the candidate that you were the boss. But that's really, I think, kind of looking at it backwards. Councilmember Ulrich? What would
I think he said it all. I'm just going to add two quick things, and then I'll pass it to the next two panelists. The first thing, probably the most basic, but sometimes overlooked, is that you have to have your family, your friends, and your supporters on board 100%. If the people that are closest to you don't want you to win as much as you do, or if not more, you're going to have a real problem. I won't say the candidate's name, but we ran a candidate in Queens for Assembly, and he worked his tail off. He was a tenacious campaigner, great guy. We had high hopes for him. One day we called him up and we said, I'll use a fictitious name, John. I'll say, John, it's 6 o'clock, you're supposed to meet Sally in Ozone Park to knock on doors. And he said, I can't make it tonight. And we said, John, why can't you make it tonight? And he said, because I haven't been home for the past few nights. My wife has given me a hard time, and I promised her that I would wash dishes. Now, one could argue that washing the dishes for your wife is more important in the long run to save your marriage and to sustain your relationship there, but not when you're running for public office, because at 6 o'clock at night you do need to be knocking on doors. So I tell that story only to underscore the fact that you have to have the full-fledged support of your friends, your spouse, your parents, your children, whoever it is that is near and dear to you. They have to be fully on board with you, because if they're not sold on the idea, if they think that you're just running for PTA president and they'll show up at your fundraising and they'll be there on election night, you're not going to win. You're not going to win because you're going to lose the help, the invaluable help that they would provide for you throughout the campaign, but you're also not going to win, I believe, because your emotional and psychological perception of yourself and your chances is greatly diminished when you say, why am I out here, you know, wearing down the soles of my shoes when my kids are, you know, doing whatever they're doing, my wife could care less, and my parents think I'm crazy. So you have to have the full support of your friends, your family, and your supporters. That's a must. The other thing that I would add is that, and this is very difficult for all of us, because I think that when you're running for office, when you're in office, that we have, sometimes we have false impressions of ourselves. And I say that very honestly, because people tell us, because they like us, and they want to like us maybe, and they want us to like them. Sometimes they tell us what we want to hear. So they'll say, you did a great job. That was a great speech. You knocked on 100 doors, you got 100 votes tonight. And sometimes you have to be realistic with yourself and give yourself a true and honest assessment, because you're the only one that knows the skeletons in your closet. You are the only one who knows your strengths and your weaknesses. And you have to be honest with yourself and say, you know, this person is with me, this person is not with me, this is going to work or this isn't going to work, because only you can truly know that. I'll tell another story. When I ran for district leader the first time, 2005, I was 19, I lost by 124 votes. I called a friend of mine who lived in Howard Beach. I knew her she knew me since I was 10 years old, 9 years old. And I said, Stella, I said, I need your support. I really need you there on election day. Republican primaries are virtually non-existent. We're going to need every single vote. You got it, Eric. I love you. I'm with you, etc., right? So Stella lived in, I forget, I'll say the 38th ED, right? So after the election, we check the books, we get the results, and there was only one vote cast in the 38th ED, and it wasn't for me. Now, I mean, with local campaigns, that will happen, because there are only a finite amount of voters, of several neighborhoods, and everybody pretty much knows everybody. They know me, they like me, they know the other guy, they worked with the other guy, they know what's her name, she was terrific. You know, the story is told time and time again, and sometimes you think that when you make that connection, that every hand that you shake is a vote. It's not. You know, and that's why when Senator Rivera was talking about knocking on doors being so important, it's absolutely true. The temptation is to stand outside the train stop and the supermarket and to shake hands with people that are not registered, don't vote, could care less about politics, or don't live in your district. Because those are the votes at the supermarket. Now, if you have spare time and it's the middle of the day and you want to stand outside Walbaum's or Pathmark, that may make sense because it's a good use of time, and I'm not advocating against that. But at 6 o'clock at night, you need to be knocking on doors for the people that you've ID'd to put you over the top. That's the only two things I'll add.
These two gentlemen got it exactly right. I think that a couple points that I would add to the conversation. It's important that you yourself can succinctly answer the question of why I'm running, and you need to be able to have a clear sense of what is driving you to seek public office and why you want to be a servant for the community. I think that additionally, I would recommend to people who are considering running for public office to do the circuit of neighborhood meetings and to be active in your community in the lead up to that campaign. And it's important that you build the relationships with the community board members and the civic association members and the precinct councils and the tenant associations. And you hear from these people about what are the issues going on in the community, because when you're knocking on those doors 2 months later, firstly, these are the people who vote. Secondly, these are the ways you're going to be informed about each and every one of the issues that are affecting their lives. So don't get confused and do that circuit of meetings in the heart of the campaign, because in the heart of the campaign, just as the councilman said, it is door knocking all the time. I'll give you a sense of what my day-to-day was like. From about a week before petitioning started, get up at 6:30 each day, be at a train station by 7:15, 7:30, greet voters on their way in, greet neighborhood residents on their way into work until about 9 o'clock, go in and work my day job, get out at 5, and by 5:30, by 6 o'clock, knock on doors every single night until 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. Saturday, I go to a farmer's market and then knock on doors from 12 or 1 o'clock to the end of the day, 8 or 9 o'clock. Sunday, go to churches all morning, and then by 1 or 2, knock on doors until 7 o'clock. That's it. 7 days a week, every day, not a day off. From just before when petitioning starts to to the day of the election. That's how you work. And that's what it means. And something I know this wasn't the question, but I think it's important to remind folks that this is hard work. It's hard work on a campaign, and it's even harder when you get elected. Because after you've talked to 4,000 people at their doorsteps, and they've told you about the issues that are affecting their lives, and you've talked to them about ways that we can work together to make a difference, that is a tremendous responsibility for you to carry forward. And if you're serious about your work, you're going to get up early every day, and you're going to work late every night to figure out how you can make a difference in your community. And if you don't have that fire in your belly, that extraordinary passion, then this probably isn't for you.
So let me just recap. Most of the things that have been said I've written down. Identifying your passion, which is absolutely key. Raising money, personal contact with voters, identifying key leaders in your neighborhood, being analytical in your approach and strategic, making sacrifices, obviously, your family. When I ran, my family forgot my name. I was dating someone, he forgot my name, he dumped me. I didn't take care of bills, or I was busy on the campaign trail. And there was days when I didn't want to do it. There was days when I yelled and screamed and cursed and hid, locked myself inside my apartment. I left, but my message here today is you need a good team of individuals who can talk to you and who can be real with you and basically slap you and say, listen, are you really committed to this? Otherwise, don't waste our time. You've got to get up early, you've got to be committed to this because a lot of people are relying upon you. So it's absolutely key. But I think back about what happened recently in this congressional race, and I think about the candidate who lost. And let me be honest, he was boring as hell. He was very boring, and he said it himself. I'm not saying anything new. You've got to have personality, And I know a lot of people who run for office who do not like people. In fact, I know a few politicians who are in office who really do not like the public that they serve. And I'll limit my comments to the members of the City Council. What's so wonderful about working with members of the City Council, all of them are interesting and they all have good lives and they all have their unique personalities and they're really funny. I mean, Eric is fabulous and young and cute and just sweet, and he's sort of somewhat independent. Sometimes he's with Republicans, sometimes he's with us on progressive issues, and I'm shocked. And I'm like, he's great. Even, believe it or not, Dan Halloran, I really like him. He's a nut, but I like him, you can tell him. I like Jimmy Otto, I like some of my Republican colleagues. And because they have personalities, and a lot of my Democratic candidates have personalities. But there are some individuals who run for office who really do not like the public. You can see them in a room. We have a crowded room, and they're usually off in the corner texting, or they're somewhere outside. Or when people approach them, you can see the look of, like their disdain in their face, or fear in their face. Oh, they're asking me a question. You really have got to be a people person. You got to know how to work a crowd. You have to know how to convert people. Even if they disagree with you, they have to walk away respecting your position. And you've got to be bold. When I ran for office, all of you know my story, there was this terrible project in my district. And instinctively, I opposed it. I didn't talk to anyone, I just said, how could you build a 20,000-seat arena at the corner at the crossroads of Brooklyn and Atlantic and Flatbush? How could you do that with 20 skyscrapers? And I just came out there. And I'm glad that the community was behind me. There were some who opposed, let's be honest, but the large majority of the residents who actually live in the neighborhood supported me. When I came out in support of marriage equality, I sort of understood and sort of knew on the ground that most of the residents in the district would support that. And people respect you for making bold and brave, taking bold and brave positions on issues. And when they know that you're going to speak truth to power, and that you're not going to flip-flop, and that people will respect you for taking positions like that. That's what I think individuals should stand for. You should stand for something. Otherwise, people will think you will fall for anything and everything. And if you want to be, you just want to be someone who is Machiavellian, it'll get you press. It will get you attention. So, again, a list of key people, raising money, make sacrifices, make sure your family's on board and your close contact, make sure you have a team of individuals. I have angels around me. I have a God squad around me, about 7 ministers, and if you ever say anything bad about Tish James, they'll say bad things and the devil will come your way, they tell me. So make sure you have a team of people around you who are your supporters, who can speak truth to you, who can tell you when you're wrong, who can shake you up a little bit, and make sure you represent bold and brave leadership, and just, again, identify, make sure you have that fire in the belly. Whatever ignites that fire in the belly, go with it. Thank you.
Before I open up to the audience so that they can ask you their own questions, which I'm sure are better than mine, all of you have supported candidates and been on both sides of victors and losers. What is you think that we have a system that it really tries to prohibit new candidates from getting involved, that tries to deter people from taking on machine politics. What do you think is the greatest stumbling block for new candidates? What do the people in this room need to look out for? Not having jumped into the race before, what is something that really you have to have gone through it in order to know to avoid making this error?
So oftentimes I see individuals who are afraid to take on the political apparatus. They believe the hype. And the reality is that, club politics are dying. And people are building and identifying new voters. And you have got to awaken sleeping dragons and sleeping constituencies all throughout the city of New York and identify new voters. In the district that I represent, as most of you know, I have African Americans, I've got ethnic whites, I've got Orthodox community, but there is a growing Muslim community. And no one has tapped into that constituency yet. And so the question is, if you can identify a new constituency in your district, are you registering them? Are you meeting with them? Are you identifying their issues? Are you meeting with their leaders? And are you also identifying other young people in your district who unfortunately are alienated by politics, been turned off by politics, whatever? Again, Lincoln, harking back to Lincoln, he identified these, what is often described as hipsters, and organized these young people. He doesn't like the term, but that's who they are. And he organized them, and now they're a potent political force to be reckoned with in Brooklyn. And so going back to the recommendation about building coalitions, I hitched on early with these hipsters, with these young people. One, because they keep me young, and two, because they consistently remind me of what politics is all about and how it can be transformational in the lives of others. And so just identify a new constituency, work with them, grow them, establishing that trust. And sometimes you can take on, what is described as, this political apparatus which he took on and was successful in bringing down, and I'm sure going forward will be successful in bringing down in the future.
Thank you, Tish. She's entirely too generous. Don't believe most of what she says about me. But one thing we haven't talked about today that's probably the most common stumbling block for first-time candidates is petitioning. And as a general recommendation, I imagine that many of the people in this room have volunteered on campaigns before, but devote some time to that and find candidates that live in your neighborhood, near where you live, who you're inspired by, incumbent elected officials who are doing their jobs right. And there are many of them out there, including the 3 people that I share the stage with, and work for them, volunteer for them, learn what it's like to petition, how this process works. It's a bunch of old arcane rules, but it's not all that complicated. You just need a little bit of experience. Gather experience knocking on doors, gather experience attending fundraisers and learning how this process goes for raising money. Talk to incumbent elected officials and candidates to learn from them. I think that none of this is rocket science. And follow your intuition. First-time candidates can win, but really I do advise you to take advantage of the experience of folks like Tish. I mean, in my campaign, I had 4 elected officials endorse me, and Tish and Diana Reyna, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, and Jumaane Williams were calling me all the time, giving advice, telling me about their experiences, and it was extremely helpful.
In the special election in 2009, there were 6 candidates who ran originally, and 2 of them were knocked off the ballot. One was the quote-unquote favorite, who opposed me in November. The local paper ran. I love local papers because there is no objectivity whatsoever. It's really just whatever they want to print, libel, slanders, or otherwise. They're funny though to read for sure. The local paper ran a chart, and they said that Lou Simon collected and filed 6,708, signatures. Dr. Geraldine Chappie had 5,700 whatever signatures. Frank DeLuccio had around 4,800 some odd signatures. Glenn DeResto had 3,000 signatures. Mike Mercado had 3,000 some odd signatures. Eric Ulrich, last place, 1,600 signatures. You needed, by law, about 1,210 signatures. Everybody said, Eric is finished, he's done. Now, I knew what they didn't. All of my signatures were door to door. And I told my volunteers, do not let anyone sign this sheet unless their name is on this list. And that is how we are going to collect signatures. Now, let's talk about the two candidates that were knocked off the ballot. One of them stood outside wall bottles collecting signatures. And he was thrown off, not by me, but by one of his Democratic opponents, who filed objections, who went line by line, who cataloged everyone else's petition signatures, and who knocked his petition off the ballot because he had all of these fraudulent, erroneous, non-registered people signing his piece of paper. He also made the mistake of using green paper, which is not illegal, but and also the star as a symbol, which at the time was the official insignia of the Democratic Party. And you weren't allowed to because it was a nonpartisan election. You had to use, like, you know, house with a smiley face or a heart, or you had to come up. I had like two people shaking hands or something. I mean, you had to use your own party name and your own party symbol. You weren't permitted to use an established party and an established party or designated symbol, and he did that. So he got knocked off for two reasons. The other candidate filed things late, he just made terrible mistakes, but he got knocked off the ballot. But, you know, the basics, getting back to the basics. Having someone who knows what they're doing, having a mentor. Having a rabbi in politics is not a bad thing if it's a good rabbi. There are good rabbis and bad rabbis, right? If you have a good rabbi and someone who is willing to take you, not necessarily under their wing, but hand in hand, and is willing to take you to where you want to go, that's a good thing. If they give you good advice and sound advice and they're a true friend. If they're bad, they're going to lead you down in the wrong direction, and then you're in deep trouble. That leads me to my second point. If you have a bad rabbi that is setting you up, or somebody that you think is a friend and they're really not, that gets back to the sportive theory of politics, right? You're a political scientist, you know that you have the layer cake theory, you have all these theories, and then there's a nuanced theory called the sportive theory. The sportive theory in political science suggests that society, and when they use the term society, they don't mean general population, they mean the political establishment. Society lives in constant fear of young pubescent men. Now that's a sexist term, obviously, but it means that the political establishment is in constant fear of the up-and-comers. I fought two machines, and I came out on top because I worked hard, I had good rabbis, I was honest with people, even when they agreed with me, and even when they disagreed with me, rather. But they walked away respecting me because I was straightforward with them. I didn't try to blow smoke. Yep. I just said, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is why I want to be there, and this is why I'm asking for your vote. If you want to vote for me, great, I'd be honored to have it, and I'll work every day to keep your support. If you don't, vote for the other guy, and you get what you deserve. And that resonated with people. That honesty really resonated with people, and if you do the right thing, you'll come out on top.
The one thing that I want to underline, and all of them have said it, and it cannot be said enough, on the operational aspect of campaigns, on the basics of what it takes to actually win campaigns, just make sure that you surround yourself with people that know what they're doing. Here's a trick question. What is the easiest way to win an election?
Get everyone else thrown off.
Bingo! Not having any other opponents. That's the easiest way to win an election. So easy, as Lincoln stated, that you might not even have to be on the ballot for 25 years and you get reelected. Not even at that point, just nominated, and then you get to keep the position. So making sure that you know what that process is like, and the process is designed to be exclusive in the purest sense of the word. It is meant to exclude people. So making sure that you surround yourself with people that know what they're doing is incredibly important so you can actually stay on the ballot. But I'd also want to, and the point, one of the points that you were making right there is this other political scientist that wrote about the oligarchical tendencies of political parties, and how I think his name was Michel, I think. But what he was saying was that every institution, every political organization, regardless of how it begins, eventually turns into an oligarchy, and there is a sense that they want to perpetuate that oligarchical, rule, and therefore having people kind of break in is always difficult. But one thing I want to make sure that is stated is that I can't stress enough one of the first things that I said, which is you have to think things through. And this is in no way meant to be disrespectful or disparaging of any of the people here.
But being a contrarian for contrarian's sake I don't think is necessarily the way to go. Sometimes being in opposition to something, just because of what it is, doesn't necessarily lead to a victory, doesn't necessarily lead to you being in a better position to win. You know, you have to think things through. Are you going to be, you know, are you going to just say, well, there's this thing and I oppose it, and I don't want, and whatever this thing is, it might be the Democratic Party, it might be the local Democratic Party, it might be an established person that has been there for 25 years, it might be anything. It's like, I'm just going to be against that person or against that thing, and you know, I'm going to ride this wave of reform and change. The reason why these folks are here, and not just because they might have said, you know, I want to run in the WFP line, nobody else has ever done it, or I want to run against the local party boss because I don't think he's doing the right thing, or I want to run here because, you know, I'm younger and cuter than everybody else and I can win. That's not the reason why these folks won. They won because they organized themselves, they thought it through. There was like, how much money do I need to raise? What kind of door knocks do I need to do? What is it that I'm actually telling people? What is the message that I'm delivering? Is it a real thing? And why is it that I'm doing this to begin with? Do I want to actually represent the people that live in these districts, or do I just want to have an honorable in front of my name because it's cute? Like these are all, and even excluding myself, these are all great stories. But do not ignore the core of it. It is not just because, you know, Lincoln stood against the party that he won. It is because he organized, because he thought it through. He's like, what do I need to do to win? And he put all the pieces together to be able to win. Same thing for Tish, same thing for Eric. It was not just, and in my case, yes, the overall goal was to make sure that homeboy was nowhere near a Senate seat, and that he was not representing, and I put that in quotation marks because he never represented anything except himself. But that might have been the driving goal. But there was a lot of thinking that went through to how much money do we need to raise, what does the message need to be, how hard do I have to work to actually get this done. So I'd want to underline that. Don't just be a contrarian for contrarian's sake, but think it through and make sure you know how you're going to get from point A to point B to be able to be successful.